back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Kate, and on this channel we talk about books and all things bookish. Today, what we're going to do is we're going to go through every single series that I'm currently in the middle of reading, and I'm going to let you know if I'm going to continue reading it or if I'm DNFing that series, never to be read again. You will see some popular titles that are well loved on this that I am probably not going to continue to read, and I just want to put a disclaimer out there that this is nothing personal against the books. I know that these are books that a lot of people do love, and just because they weren't for me doesn't mean that they won't be for you. But there are also a lot of books on here that I really enjoyed, and I cannot wait to continue to read and maybe reread again in the future. So the first series we're talking about is the Throne of Glass series. Everybody knows and loves this series. This is by Sarah J. Maas, and it is an 8-book series, so it's absolutely massive. I'm currently about to start tandem reading the 6th and 7th book in the series. Which if you don't know, you just read them at the same time because they happen at the same timeline. It's super intimidating because they're massive books to begin with. So I think between the two of them, you're reading about 1,400 pages worth of material as you're doing this tandem read. So it's super intimidating. I've been putting it off for a while, but I'm gonna finally do it. I finally talked myself into it. I have all the books tabbed and ready to go. This series centers around our main character, Selena, and in this first book, it's about her entering this king's competition to become the king's assassin. She was actually taken away from a slave camp in order to enter this competition. You follow her through that. I'm not going to talk any more about this series because if I do, it's going to be super spoilery and I don't want to spoil anything. But the way that this starts is not the way that we are at book 6 and 7 right now. It is a completely different story. It's very fantasy, fae realm type of fantasy. This book this series I am definitely going to be continuing to read. I cannot wait. I hear that one of the books that I'm going to start right now, Empire of Storms, is fantastic and Kingdom of Ash is fantastic. So I cannot wait to continue. This is definitely not a DNF series for me. I will be continuing immediately. Keeping on the Sarah J. Maas train, we have the Court of Thorns and Roses series. This is another fae fantasy series that Sarah J. Maas has written, another well-loved series. Currently there's 5 books out. Nothing else has been released at this point, but there will be more novels in the future. I'm all caught up in this series. I cannot wait for the next ones to be released. I cannot wait to see the different stories that evolve. Basically, this series is kind of broken up into little segments. So the first 3, you're following our main character, Feyre, as she, as a human, comes into this fae world, and things kind of go from there. The first one technically is a Beauty and the Beast retelling. I don't think any of the other ones really have any ties to Beauty and the Beast. I might be wrong about that, but I'm not really sure. And then you get a little novella, which is, I guess, technically book 4, and then book 5 follows her sister. So you kind of get some different point of views. I don't know if book 6 is going to continue to follow this sister, if it's going to follow a different character. I'm not really sure, but I can't wait to continue to read this. So this is definitely not a DNF series. The first series that I'm going to talk about that I'm not going to finish is the Red Rising series by Pierce Brown. I'm kind of scared to say that I'm not going to finish this because I know so many people are die hard for this book. A lot of people that are just fantasy readers or just romance readers have read this book and thought it was phenomenal. It's described as a Hunger Games but on Mars, and it is that essentially. It's very brutal. Definitely maybe read some trigger warnings before you go into this because there is some pretty graphic stuff that goes on into it. I just found there was something about his writing style that I didn't necessarily jive with very well. I found it a bit hard to follow, and I didn't feel like I was connected to any of the main characters. I didn't necessarily really care that much what happened. It was very action-packed and action. Hi, Murphy. What are you doing? Murphy came for a visit. Say hi. He's mad because I'm paying attention to you guys and not him. But you gotta get down. So I do know that he has 2 more books in this trilogy, and then there's a trilogy that's out. I don't know if it's completed yet, but there's definitely follow-up books to this that I think happened like 10 or 15 years in the future of the events of this trilogy. Basically, what this evolves around is you have your main character, Darrow, and he is living on Mars. Basically, everybody's given a color, and those different colors play different roles in the society. So the golds are like the leaders, the rich, the powerful. Darrow is a red, so he is basically kind of like a miner in this world, and that's kind of a lot lower on the food chain. He actually ends up then disguising himself as a gold and entering a competition with other golds. So you kind of see him go through that. The concept is really interesting. I thought I was gonna like this. It is sci-fi, which isn't my normal genre, but I have read science fiction in the past and I have enjoyed science fiction books, so I wasn't really nervous about that. But there was just something that really kind of let me down about this book. But I think if it sounds interesting to you, definitely give it a shot, because like I said, I know that there's a lot of people that really, really love this book. So the series that I'm currently reading right now, I'm reading the first book of this. I'm probably about 35% of the way through it right now. Is the Addicted series by Krista and Becca Ritchie. I don't have the physical copy of this, but I am reading it on my Kindle. It's available on Kindle Unlimited for anybody that's interested. This is another series that I know people love, love, love this series, and I've heard that the first book is not the favorite out of the whole series, that it really does get better as the series goes on. And I'm super hopeful that that is actually what ends up happening, because right now I'm reading this and I am enjoying it, but I'm not loving it. I think if I didn't know that the series got way better in the future, this might be a series that I wouldn't pick up the next book for. Currently, this book has taken me, I'm probably on month 2 of reading this on my Kindle, and the fact that I'm only 35% of the way through, 2 months in, kind of tells you a lot about how I feel. I do think the story's picking up a little bit right now. This story centers around our 2 main characters, Lo and Lily, and both of them battle their own individual addictions, and they kind of support each other through these addictions, almost in an enabling way is the way it seems right now. And then there is a romance that is kind of in the midst of happening right now, that you feel the tension of it leading up very early, so I don't think that's a spoiler. But I have heard that this is a very toxic series, toxic relationship. So if that's not something that you're into, maybe this wouldn't be the right series for you. But right now, I'm liking it. I will continue this book, and I think I probably will continue the rest of the series as well. I don't think it's going to be a big priority on my list to get through these books, especially if I continue to feel the way I do right now about this book. But we'll see how things go as I continue to read. Maybe I'll love this. I know people are like die hard. This is their favorite series. This feels like family. So who knows? The Chestnut Springs series by Elsie Silver is a cowboy romance series. This is actually the 4th book in the series that I'm holding here. I don't own the first one. I own the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th. Currently, I think I just read the first one on my Kindle, so then when I went to buy a physical copy, I jumped right into the second one. Eventually I'll go buy the first one again, but I just haven't yet. These books, like I said, cowboy romances, small town books. I have loved every single book so far. The only one that I didn't love quite as much was the 3rd one, Powerless. It just made me a little bit more like cringe as I was reading it, as opposed to like squealing, kicking my feet. But these books, all of them are really good. They're really, really fast paced. They're decently long. Like all of them are over 400 pages. For a romance, that does feel quite long. But the font is pretty big. You speed through them. I mean, I think it took me like a day and a half to read pretty much all of them because I was really enjoying it and I didn't want to put the book down. They're all interconnected standalones. Every single one is dual POV as well, which is really nice. You get to see both sides of the people in the relationship. And for the most part, it centers around this family, which is called the Eaton family, and they live on this farm in Canada, in Alberta. And there's different brothers that get their stories told about them, and then kind of different friends of the family as well. So pretty much, I would say it's a 5-star series so far, so I definitely will be continuing this series 100%. There's only one more left, and that's Hopeless, and I've heard that that is not people's favorite in the series, so I hope that I enjoy it because I want to finish the series on a really good note. But I definitely will be reading it, and yeah, fingers crossed that I like it. We're talking about another series that I'm not going to finish next, and that's The Inheritance Games by Jennifer Lynn Barnes. This is a young adult, it's kind of like a mystery action kind of book is maybe what I would classify it. You follow our main character who suddenly inherits a lot of money, like a lot of money, from somebody that she's never met. So she doesn't know how she's related to this person. She doesn't know why this person has given her all of this money. And the only caveat to her actually getting all this is that she has to go and live in this home for, I think it's a month. And if she lasts a month, then she gets the inheritance. while she's in the home, all of these games and things kind of start appearing in the house, and she develops relationships with some of the brothers that are grandsons of the person that has passed away. Again, another series that a lot of people really enjoy, and I thought that I would like it as well, but it did feel very, very young adult, and I don't think that that's quite what I enjoy anymore. It was super fast paced. It's one of those books where the chapters are literally like 2 to 3 pages long, so you do feel like you're just flying through this book as you're reading it. So I think it's kind of deceptive when books are like that, because you think that you're really liking it, and maybe you are sometimes, but you're reading it so quickly that it tricks your brain into thinking you're enjoying it more than you were, just because the chapters are really short. I think that that is a really good trick that some authors use, but even with that on this one, I just didn't find that it was quite for me. But if you do like young adult, and particularly young adult that feels more like it would be like something a 13-year-old would read, then I would recommend this still, because I know a lot of people do enjoy it. It's just, it didn't hit the mark for me. I have really no interest in continuing on with the series. I just don't really care too much about what is going to happen in the future. On to Magnolia Parks, so another loved series. Magnolia Parks is currently 4 books. There's going to be 5. I've currently read books 1 and 2, and I liked them both. I didn't love them. I know some people are really, really obsessed with these books, and I did find the writing was really good, really lyrical. There's lots of good quotes that came out of this book, but I wasn't in love with the way that people were. I am going to continue the series, so I do have the 3rd book already, and I know that that is a really beloved book in the series, as well as the 4th one, so I'm excited to see that. I think you would like this if you're into like Gossip Girl, really like rich people drama. If you're looking for a plot-driven book, this is not the book for you, because this is solely character-driven. I dare say there's almost no plot to it. I found there was a little bit more of a plot in the 2nd book, which centers around Daisy Hates as opposed to Magnolia Parks. Really, it's just people getting in relationships with each other, toxic relationships, it's this constant back and forth of issues that are coming up and not being resolved or really talked about in the right way. Just very, very toxic. Definitely not for everybody, this book. I find this is a series that either people really, really love it or really, really hate it. And I don't know, I was kind of in the middle of that where I liked it. Both books were about a 4 stars for me. I think I liked Daisy Hates a little bit more than the Magnolia Parks, and I think that was because there was a little bit more plot in it. A River Enchanted is part of the Elements of Cadence series. So Rebecca Ross is the same author that wrote the Divine Rivals duology, which I absolutely adored. I went into this thinking that I was really going to enjoy this a lot because of how much I love the Divine Rivals duology, but it just really didn't hit the mark with me. I needed a little bit more plot out of it. I found, again, I just wasn't really connecting. I wasn't really drawn into the story. Sorry, you might hear my cat running around. He's freaking out. What you doing? He does this thing where he just like whips around the house, but he makes himself so out of breath that he'll just stop and start panting really loud. You okay? He's fine. So this it's kind of a lighter fantasy where they do have spirits, like these folk of the elements that they kind of call to, that they're kind of mischievous in a way as well. They will wreak havoc in people's lives, but they are just part of this world that these people live in. And I thought that was interesting. I thought the concept of it all was very interesting. I think Rebecca Ross comes up with super unique concepts. So both this and Divine Rivals, they're both books that I've never really read anything like them before. And I think there's something to be said for this. And because of that, I would recommend this to people. But only a specific type of person. I don't think that I'm going to continue this duology. There's just one other one to complete the duology. A favorite series of mine is the Crowns of Nyaxia series. So currently this is 2 books and a novella. That's kind of like the completed duology as it sits, but there are going to be more novels that come out in this Crowns of Nyaxia universe, and I think it's part of the same series. As far as I know, it's going to be centered around different characters, so you will get different points of view. Kind of the main plot that these characters and these main points of view in this book was about is kind of concluded now, and now we're following somebody else, but it's the same universe, similar characters to what we've seen before, but just different points of view. Nothing else is out yet other than this duology, but basically this centers around our main character, Aurea, as she enters as a human into a vampire competition, which is super dangerous to do, and she's actually been raised by the king in their world, and that's why she's entering into this. She's the only human that's going to be in this. But if she wins this competition, she will be granted a wish by their queen, Nyaxia, so that's why she wants to enter it. And so it's following that. It's another kind of Hunger Games-esque feeling book, but with vampires. It is pretty plot driven. You get quite a bit of romance in this as well, but this is something I'm definitely going to be continuing to read. I love it for the authors when they get picked up, if that's what they want to be traditionally published. But for me as a reader, it's hard when now I have the independently published books for these first 2 books in the novella, and then now I know anything else that comes out in the future, they're not going to match, and that's going to be so frustrating for me as a reader. I guess I can just deal with it. It's fine. It's not that devastating, but like it's kind of devastating at the same time. I think you guys probably understand. All right, so the biggest book of this year, of 2023 at least, was Fourth Wing. And this book series, right now it's Fourth Wing and Iron Flame. Everybody loved Fourth Wing so much, and then Iron Flame got a lot of hype because Fourth Wing was so good, and I think a lot of people didn't like Iron Flame as much. I liked them about equal. I maybe even liked Iron Flame a little bit more because of the politics that were involved. This is basically following our main character, Violet, as she enters into a rider school to learn how to ride dragons, and she has to go through this whole learning process, these trials, these things that happen that are pretty life or death through the whole thing, and there is a big romance plot along the way. I definitely will be continuing the series. I'm a massive fan. I wasn't crazy for this book the way that other people were when it first came out, but it is something that I really did enjoy, and I definitely will continue to read. I think anything that has dragons in it, I'm just naturally going to like, because I think dragons are super cool, and the dragons, like, they're true characters in this book. They're not like creatures. They can speak. They speak into people's minds, but they can speak. So they have personalities. It's really, really interesting that way. So I will read it whenever the third one does come out. I definitely will read that. I found the second one was really, really long to read. So I think it might be one of those books that if it's equally as long, it's just gonna take me a while to get the courage together to actually read it. But I'm looking forward to it nonetheless. I will be continuing. This next series, I don't actually have the physical copies of it because I did read it on my Kindle, and that is the Never After series by Emily McIntosh. That's who it's by. And this series, it's complete standalones. They are about storytale retellings in a dark romance type of point of view. So I did find with these ones that I'm kind of learning about myself that dark romance is not really for me. So I found both of these books did fall a little flat for that. I find it really unbelievable when I'm reading a book that, like, if you're trying to get with somebody and then they're like chopping off people's fingers and like people for you, like, and then it's portrayed as like a romantic gesture, like that's not romantic. I would be running out the door so fast because that is a psychopath. But these women in these books, and not just these books specifically, but like any dark romance that you read, they're like, you chopped off that person's fingers? Oh my gosh, you are the person for me. The fact that he would do that for me, stunning. But like, no, that's not how a real person reacts. And I'm reading this and I'm like, I don't like this person. That's a psychopath, truly. And that's how I felt about these books. And another book that I'm gonna get to later in this. So I think if dark romances are your thing, you're probably going to like these books. There were really, really cute like nods to the stories that they were retelling from. So the first one I read was Hooked. So that was a Peter Pan retelling, and the second one was Scarred, which is a Lion King retelling. And it just like the names that they gave people and the characters that were there, characters that you are already familiar with from these beloved childhood movies, but just like back in a totally twisted way. That being said, I'm not going to continue the series. I don't really think I'm going to read any more dark romance in the future unless it's something that's really highly recommended. I just find I don't connect with the people. I don't find that it's believable, which I know sounds ridiculous because I read a lot of fantasy and that's like not even meant to be believable. That's like a whole different world. But I don't know, I still need to understand why the characters are making the choices that they're making, and I find just in dark romances I don't, and definitely not in either of these books. I have heard that Hooked and Scarred are kind of the two favorites of the series as well. I think there's another 3 books after that. Because those are the favorites and I've read the favorites, I know if I didn't like those very much, I'm not going to be liking anything that follows as well. So I'm so sorry, read it if you like that thing, but I just don't think it's for me. Powerless by Lauren Roberts. This is book 1, and I think it's just called the Powerless trilogy that Lauren Roberts is coming out with. The second one is coming out a little later in 2024 at some point. I don't think we have a super long time to wait for it, but definitely at least a couple months. This book was one of my favorite books of the year. I 100% am going to be continuing to read this trilogy and just like drool over the words that Lauren Roberts has written. I love this book. This is a young adult fantasy, so there's no spice or anything like that at all in these books, but there is a lot of tension, there's a lot of banter. It centers around 2 characters, which is Kai and Peyton, so you get the dual POV when you are reading these books. Peyton is an ordinary in this world, and Kai is an elite. He's actually a prince, but elites basically have different powers, and ordinaries don't have powers. And in this world, if you're an ordinary, that's really bad, and you can actually be either sent away or executed. So she's basically in hiding, pretending that she has powers when she doesn't. Through a series of events, she ends up in a king's competition where people are competing to win this competition. That's what people do. They compete to win. Meanwhile, her and Kai kind of create a little bit of like an allegiance with one another. Romance blooms. I just loved it. The banter in this book is truly unmatched, like truly. Top banter books, honestly. This, Emily Henry Book Lovers. I loved the banter in that book. And then also any of the Chestnut Springs as well. Particularly Flawless. No, I can't pick one. Any of the Chestnut Springs. Banter, so good. Like, it had me squealing as I was reading it. I loved it so much. I cannot wait for the second book to come out. I will be reading it probably on release day. All right, so this is Immortal Longings by Chloe Gong. Chloe Gong is she's a popular name because she wrote those books. I didn't read them, so I don't remember really. I think, was it Violent Delights? Something like that. She wrote another series that was young adult fantasy, and this is adult fantasy. And this is the first one in the series. I think the series is called Flesh and False Gods. And this is the only one that's out right now. I got it through Book of the Month, and the story of this sounded super intriguing. It's a Antony and Cleopatra retelling. It's another trial book. I guess I read a lot of trials this year. But I either loved them or I hated them. This unfortunately falls into I didn't love it quite as much. They're in these trials to win. This is kind of like a last man standing kind of trial, so only one person can win and only one person can leave the trial at the end. The interesting thing about this book and in this world is that these people can jump. They're called jumpers, I think. I don't know if I just made that up or not, but I think they're called jumpers. But if they look at somebody, they can hop into their body and kind of leave their flesh prison behind. I didn't love this book. I think there was a lot of plot holes in it that I just couldn't look around. And even like, especially the ending, like if you just really turn a blind eye to a lot of the plot holes, I guess it was a good ending, but I couldn't. I was like, that doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense. That wouldn't happen based off of the rules that you have created, Chloe, in this world. So do better. Do better. I'm not going to continue the series. Then we have the Shadow and Bone book. So this is a trilogy that goes along with the Six of Crows duology. And it's meant to be read with this trilogy first and then the Six of Crows after the fact. I've so far read the first book and I liked it. This is where things get a little bit tricky because I think if I hadn't heard such good things about the Six of Crows duology, I would probably DNF this series after this one. It was another one that just felt very, very young adult. I did like it. Like I said, I liked it. I think I gave it 4 stars. But thinking back to it now, I really don't remember much of the plot. I wasn't super invested in what was happening, and because it felt so young adult, it just wasn't something that was my cup of tea again. I think that's a trend that we might see here. But that being said, I am going to continue because I do want to enjoy the Six of Crows duology to its maximum. And I think if I can read these, then it will give me the basis to really enjoy the Six of Crows. I've actually had the Six of Crows book for a long, long time before I owned these. And I tried to read it once, and I just found that I couldn't quite understand what was happening in the world. So because of that, I stopped reading it. I thought I should read these first because that will give me the world building that I need to enjoy that other book, so I'm not just frustrated while I'm reading it. I think if I get through the second book or even partway through the second book and I'm still like, I don't know about this, because I have heard the second and third book aren't as good as the first one, I might DNF it at that point because I do have some of the world building set up just from reading this one. So we'll see what happens. I'm not super sold on this series, but I am going to continue. I'll for sure at least give Six of Crows a chance. We have another duology here. This is Daughter of the Moon Goddess. This is part of the Celestial Kingdom duology. This is like a Japanese style fantasy about our main character, who is the Daughter of the Moon Goddess. Essentially, she is trying to free her mother, who is the moon goddess, because of a circumstance that has happened that has ended up with her mother not being free. So this book, it was enjoyable. I don't know if Japanese fantasies are exactly something that I love. It seemed like every single person that this main character met fell in love with her instantly. And I found that was just a little bit hard to believe. And it was one of those books where it's like, this happens, and then this happens, and then this happens, and then this happens, and she goes here and does this, and then this happens. And it was just like one thing after another that you kind of like lost the point of the story at some point. If I didn't own the second book already, I would DNF this series. But I do own the second book already. So I am going to continue to read it. Not high on my priority list, but one day I will read the second book. If the second book is not vibing with me, I'm going to DNF it. On the similar lines of that, we have the Shatter Me series by Tahara Mafi. This series is a young adult dystopian type series. I've actually owned this first book since I was a teenager, and I never ever read it. And then I saw it rebuilding hype again recently because I think she did release newer books in the series. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to read that book. And I read it, and I didn't love it. But guess what? I do own the second one again, and I just hear that people just like love the love interest in these books. They're obsessed that the books do get better. So I'm going to read the second book because I own it, but I think if I'm still not sold by the end of the second book, then that will be it for me, because it is very young adult again, which is just something I've said it a million times, just not super into that kind of style of writing in books anymore. So I'll read the second book, it's fine, but this is a very long series, and it's a long series for me to continue to read if I'm not enjoying the books. So I have 2 series left to talk about. Both of these I don't have in physical form, but the first one is the Once Upon a Broken Heart series. This is by Stephanie Garber, and this falls after the Caraval series. This series I was so excited about because people say that this is like their favorite books of the year. They love this series. So what I even did was I read the whole Caraval trilogy before I jumped into Once Upon a Broken Heart, because that's how people said, you know, you really maximize your reading enjoyment. I didn't like any of the Caraval books. I shouldn't say I didn't like them. I definitely didn't love them. They were okay. They were all around 3 stars, but I was like, you know what? Fantastic. I'm done. I'm going to read Once Upon a Broken Heart. Same thing. I did not love Once Upon a Broken Heart, and it's just so sad knowing that I put so much effort into reading all of those books just for them all to fall pretty flat for me. And I think my big gripe with Stephanie Garber's writing is that it is very kind of surface writing. You aren't really delving deep into characters' thoughts, characters' feelings or interactions. It's very much like, here's this whimsical world, which she does develop really well, and that's really nice and everything. Like there's just not enough substance to the characters to keep me really that interested in reading more. So I know The Ballad of Never After is like people's like #1 books, but I really think at this point, if I haven't liked any of these books leading up to this point. I don't think I'm gonna like A Ballad of Never After. I did actually get it from the library and I was like, Kate, just make yourself read this book. This is the one that people love. You might like it. And I couldn't bring myself to read it. I took it back to the library. I know people love this book and I know this might rub some people the wrong way. And it's not that it's a bad book, it just wasn't for me. So I don't think I'm gonna continue this series. Sorry. And last but not least, the final series that I'm gonna talk about is another duology, and that is the Cat and Mouse Duet by H.D. Carlton. This book is another popular series. It's a dark romance. I think all of my feelings about this are pretty similar to the Never After series that I already talked about, where I'm reading this and I'm thinking, there's no way that the woman in this story would ever fall for this like insane man. Absolutely insane. And in the beginning, there's definitely some pushback, but by the end of it, she's just kind of all in, and I just didn't feel like that's actually what would happen. Yeah, very, very violent. There is like an underlying plot with this, which was nice. I was kind of more interested in what was going on with that than the romance part of the story. So I think like if I had more of that plot, less of the romance, I might have liked it more if it wasn't a dark romance. But yeah, definitely did not thoroughly enjoy that book. I won't be reading the second one. It did leave off on a cliffhanger, unfortunately, so I do have a little bit of a want in the back of my brain of maybe one day I'll pick up that second book, but like I won't. They're massive. They're huge books. It's a lot of time to sit there and not be enjoying the book that you're reading. So that being said, I'm not going to finish that. I thought I was going to drop them. There are all of the series that I'm currently in the middle of reading. Oh, let me put them down. Oh God. Let me know your thoughts on those, because I know I do have some controversial opinions on some of those series that I'm especially no longer going to continue to read, because I know there's a lot of people that love those books, and I'm so sorry if that's you, but continue to love them. No shame for loving them. Please no shame for me for hating them. Dislike. Hate's a strong word. Dislike. I can definitely appreciate all the effort the authors put into writing, and just knowing that everybody has different tastes, and my tastes are not going to align with everybody else's. But that being said, thank you so much for watching today's video. I'll be posting videos every Wednesday, so come back next Wednesday to watch my next video. If you have any series that are popular that maybe you're not finishing, let me know, because I'm interested, because I think that that's a little hot take sometimes. All right, guys, you have a wonderful day, and I will see you next time.